So this is going to be a little bit of a different flavor when it comes to Ivan Demidov, the newest Montreal Canadien, and probably the most popular man in the city. Or, no, not in the city. He was in Toronto, so not in the city, but still, Ivan Demidov is a guy whose story has been so spectacular from the moment he was drafted to where he is literally with the team right now. That, as we had spoken about yesterday, fans at Pearson Airport, Montreal fans, by the way, not even fans of the Toronto Maple Leafs, which, Pearson is in Toronto, but Montreal Canadiens fans went out there and waited hours to see Ivan Demidov land from Istanbul. And the crowd was so big that it followed him around and they were chanting his name. And I think if there's anything that's going to show just how crazy and passionate Habs fans are about this kind of stuff, look no further than Ivan Demidov. However, all KHL talk and airport talk and fans heckling and following Demidov talk aside, I wanted to talk about a different angle of the Demidov conversation, one that has room to grow, for sure. Heck, by the time this video was uploaded, maybe this information is outdated. It's from last night. I'm pre-recording this video on the night of Thursday, April 10th. So maybe the contents of this video are not going to be all too up to snuff by the time it's up. But today, we are talking about head coach Martin St. Louis and how he had spoken about Ivan Demidov in yesterday's post-practice press conference. And he doesn't talk about Demidov in the way that you might think. It's not, oh, Demidov is going to do this and he's going to do that and he's amazing and we expect him to do this. It's none of that. It's really, really low-key. This was posted on the Montreal Canadiens Twitter account. It was the post-practice press conference, and it has a whole bunch of conversations from different people in the organization. Oliver Kapanen has a moment, and so does Lane Hudson, etc., etc., but Marty St. Louis is the important one here. And speaking about Ivan Demidov, let's go over to some of the things that St. Louis had to say. There wasn't much, but there was enough to go out there and form some sort of a narrative. Marty St. Louis says he believes Ivan Demidov is in transit to Montreal. Not sure when he'll get here. #Habs. This was posted and talked about before Ivan Demidov landed in Pearson and before Habs fans were going out there and following him around. Jordan Decker replied, I thought he was meeting the team in Toronto. Marco D'Amico said he is, according to his agent. Maybe he arrived in Toronto and plans changed. And, of course, this was all before Demidov landed, so we know for sure that he did land in Toronto, and he was there. There was another conversation as to whether or not he disappointed fans by not giving any comments, and that was so ridiculous, too, because it's like, hey, there were policemen escorting this guy to his truck and making sure that he was able to get in. Like, he didn't have any time to go out there and answer any questions or respond to the fan discourse. He gave them a wave, and that was about it. I know some people were disappointed. Oh, I waited so long to see Ivan Demidov in person and to not even get an answer. Yeah, dude, nobody asked you to do that. Nobody asked you to wait hours at the airport, not even a Montreal airport, the Toronto airport, and wait for this dude. Nobody asked you to do that. But anyways, let's go over to some of the things that St. Louis also did not talk about, because this was posted by Jeremy Filosa. I thought it was an interesting thing to write about here. We're translating this tweet into English. Marty St. Louis isn't ready to talk about Ivan Demidov yet. He deflected questions about him this morning. I understand his state of mind. The Canadiens' current mission is to qualify for the playoffs. That's the next step. We shouldn't look any further than today and tomorrow. St. Louis doesn't have Demidov yet. He hasn't seen Demidov practice yet. I'm sure he'll talk to us more about it once he gets here, sees him, and forms an idea of how he wants to use him there. Now, I love how this sentence has so many he, him, switching the subject and the object of the sentence. It's like, oh, he? Who's he talking about? St. Louis or Demidov? But anyways, all grammatical nitpicking aside, this is a very fair perspective to have. St. Louis not going out there and directly addressing the media by talking about Demidov and what he is and what he could be for the Canadiens. He's just kind of wait. See what he's got in this guy first before making any judgments or comments into the media. Because ultimately that doesn't really lock you into making any promises or doing stuff, and it just leaves more flexibility there. If Demidov shows up in Montreal and he's all of a sudden an entirely different player than he was in the KHL, then hey, we're going to have the opportunity to react and respond to that as it happens, and St. Louis is going to do that too, so that will reflect in the way St. Louis decides to use this guy. I think it's already a given that he's probably going to be given some top 6 time and power play time as well. He's not going to go through the entire carousel of being in and being out and being played and being not played like he had seen as a member of SKA St. Petersburg. So I did find it interesting just how Marty St. Louis refrained from talking too much about him. Yes, he did speak about Ivan Demidov, but he doesn't want to really buy into the hype just yet. And I'll say this as well. Fans, they have the right to be excited. Fans, they have the right to fill in the blanks in their own minds as to what this guy is going to be able to do and how well he's going to perform. The coach is probably the only guy on the planet that doesn't have that luxury. He isn't allowed, pretty much, to buy into the hype and be like, yeah, he's going to be amazing, he's going to do this, he's going to do that. Hey, he hasn't even worn your sweater yet. Okay, he did at the draft, but that's different. He hasn't practiced with you yet. He hasn't done anything. So say a little something as to where he's going to be and what his plan for travel seems to be, and just leave it at that. Refrain from answering, too much about this guy, because it doesn't really help anybody. Montreal Canadiens fans are going to be excited regardless, so maybe best not to add fuel to the fire and make things even more electric than they have been. Now, to end off this video, I did want to say something else as well. This was a tweet posted by Maxime Truman that goes over and describes the Ivan Demidov travel path as it had been laid out yesterday. This is also in French, so I had to translate this one. Ivan Demidov will arrive with his girlfriend in Toronto around 7 p.m. Why Toronto and not Montreal? To make things easier with his American work visa, because he has a Canadian visa, but also to avoid the madness of an overly intense arrival at Montreal Airport. For his sake, but also to respect the guys who are fighting for a playoff spot. And it'll allow him to recover from the jet lag and travel while meeting the guys and watching a game from the top of the catwalk. Oh boy. I just realized that. If Ivan Demidov was already greeted to a reasonably sized crowd of guys in Toronto, 5 hours of a drive away from Montreal, could you have imagined how crazy it would have been in the Montreal airport had Ivan Demidov landed there? Oh my gosh, never mind the fact that the Canadiens aren't in Montreal right now, but that would have been even more crazy. It would have been like the arrival of the gosh darn Pope. You see all the people crowding out in the streets and parading and cheering their heads off for this guy. That would have been Demidov. And maybe thankfully, he ended up landing in Toronto, where the crowd was still big, but not as big as it would have been in Montreal. Ah, man, I said this yesterday, but it was like, you wouldn't catch me driving 5 hours and waiting even more hours at the airport just for the slim chance of being able to see a guy walk by and wave. But if it was in Montreal, oh boy, fans would camp out. They'd park their tents there. Anyways, all legalities about staying in the airport when you don't actually have a reason to be there aside, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Marty St. Louis' interesting comments about Ivan Demidov, and whether or not you think this is a good sign. What are your expectations for him heading into the next little while here, and how do you feel about Marty St. Louis' projected deployment of this player? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. 99 and bye.